ليلوم الخوف والكوابيس والخيانة، ليلوم الخوف والكوابيس والخيانة. نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح.
مليون سلام يا شعبنا، مليون سلام يا شعبنا، مليون حباب، مليون حباب، الاغتراب يا أبونا طول الغياب، الاغتراب فار البحور ويزدري، ونحن بس وكيه والزلزال والسن السليم من الدرايا يا شعبنا، من الدرايا يا شعبنا. أحرار كليتنا في مليء ثوار بنفتح للشمس في غيرنا باب ليوم جديد يا شعبنا، ليوم جديد يا شعبنا. بنفتديك وحنفتديك، ما بنرمي اسمك في التراب، وعيوننا تتوجه إليك انت المعلم والكتاب. ونغني ليك، ونغني ليك، ونغني ليك، ونغني ليك، والبس دريك يا ويلو يا ويلو من زحفك عليه ومن مشيك، يا ويلو من أجل الوشيك. يوم انكسر قيد الحديد، السمك والزنزانة والسجن السمين، وخطى الشهيد من حوله تهدر والنشيد. وانت الشمس من بين يديك تطلع عليك من كل باب يا شعبنا. مليون سلام يا شعبنا، 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 مليون سلام يا شعبنا.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations, first storytellers, and traditional owners of the lands on which I'm broadcasting from, and pay my respects to elders, past, present, and future. I am coming to you, and most of this event is being held on unceded sovereign Whadjuk-Noongar Budja in Western Australia. And I want to pay my respects to First Nations people who this broadcast might reach across the continent as well. I want to acknowledge the ongoing resistance and unyielding history of First Nations people across the continent of so-called Australia, and also acknowledge that for a lot of us who came here as settler refugees, the same systems that bring us relative safety are the ones that oppress and dispossess First Nations people. Always was and always will be. Hi, and welcome to the book launch of Unyielding Verse by Mahjoub Shariff, hosted by the Gadamna AlSabah forum. And thank you so much for joining us from so many different time zones. Today we have a really fantastic program for you. We will have two speakers. Unfortunately, Dr. David Moody is unable to make it, but he has, and he sent his apologies, but he will be participating in a future Gadamna AlSabah forum. Before we begin the event, I just want to talk a little bit about the humanitarian catastrophe that's happening in Sudan. And I also want to let you know that this event is being recorded and will be live streamed on Facebook. In regards to Sudan, I actually want to start this with an anecdote. Like a lot of folks, I get a lot of things from social media. And today, actually, I saw a post that was talking about the humanitarian crisis in Sudan and focusing it on the Rapid Support Forces, Janjaweed, and the way it was on a very big platform, and the way it was framed was that the issue is only the Rapid Support Forces and Janjaweed. I want to reiterate that the KZN are both the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, Janjaweed. There is no good guy in this humanitarian crisis. The people of Sudan are being held hostage by two factions of the same organization, both of whose leaders are wanted for atrocities by the International Criminal Court. I really want to reiterate that there are a lot of countries complicit in the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Sudan. So let's not just say it's the UAE. It is the UAE's absolutely a slave state and complicit. But other countries, including so-called Australia, are also complicit. Australia hosts programs like Africa Down Under and invites ministers of the Sudanese regimes, therefore giving that tacit support. The Sudanese embassy in Australia is still open, and there has been no censorship from the Australian government against the situation in Sudan, despite the active threat to Sudanese Australians across the continent. So this war against the Sudanese people, it has been shaping up to be one of the worst humanitarian crises in history. Right now, aid can't reach the people it needs. There are war crimes being committed. There's been, please bear with me, I'm becoming very emotional speaking about this. The number of people who have died from preventable diseases or from the fact that all health infrastructure has failed has been tremendous. The number of people who have faced worse violence after fleeing from their homes is uncountable. The situation in Sudan is an indictment on all of humanity. It's an indictment on the carceral capitalist imperialist system that we work to uphold, even if we don't want to uphold it. And the silence around Sudan is very loud. And I want to reiterate something that Arundhati Roy said in 2003 when she accepted the Sydney Peace Prize. There is no such thing as the voiceless. There's only the deliberately silenced or preferably unheard. And right now, the world is showing that Sudanese lives, African lives in general, are not preferably unheard. And I want us to examine the fact that in this world, there is anti-Blackness, but there is also anti-African racism. And those are very two distinct things that often intersect and interact, but that the lack of action around what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in the Congo, what's happening in other parts of the continent is at the intersection of both anti-Blackness and anti-African racism. So on that note, I'd like to begin today's event commemorating one of Sudan's most celebrated artists and activists, Al-Ustaz Mahjoub Sharif. I would also like to acknowledge the incredible work that has gone into this book, Unyielding Verse, Mahjoub Sharif's first collection in English, the work that has been done by his family, Al-Ustaz Adil Babikir, who translated it, the person who wrote the foreword, Dr. Lumia Shamat, and also by Dr. Hassan Musa, who created the incredible art for this. This book is a beautiful snapshot of the incredible work that Mahjoub Sharif has done. And it shows the wider world why he is called the people's poet by the Sudanese people. If you would like to purchase a copy of this book, please, through Gadamna AlSabah, please contact Rfeif Ismail via phone. To begin, we have a little video introducing who Mahjoub Sharif is, to those who aren't familiar. And thank you to Dr. Vivienne for doing the voiceover for this video as well.
ليلوم الخوف والكوابيس والخيانة، ليلوم الخوف والكوابيس والخيانة، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح.
Mahjoub Mohammed Sharif Mohammed, known simply as Mahjoub Sharif, was more than a poet. He was a teacher of hearts, a voice of the streets, a tireless dreamer of freedom. Born in 1948 to a family of small traders in rural Sudan, he was raised in Omdurman and went to a primary school in Al-Madina Arab in central Sudan. He moved away from the family trade and trained as a teacher in the Maridi Institute for Teachers in Khartoum. He chose not the path of commerce, but the calling of words and education. From the classrooms of Khartoum to the crowded courtyards of the people, his voice rose with clarity, warmth, and defiance. Sharif was an activist for human rights, a unionist and a member of the Sudanese Communist Party since the 1970s. Sharif's poetry lived where the people lived, in their songs, their laughter, their longing for justice. He wove everyday language with lyrical play, turning simple phrases into banners of resistance and hymns of love. His verses, carried on the singing voices of giants like Mohammed Wadi in Sudan and like Muhammad Munir in Egypt, became anthems for democracy, for dignity, for Sudan itself. For this devotion, the people named him Sha'ir al-Shabab, the people's poet. The regimes of Sudan feared his pen more than they feared armies. For daring to speak truth, Sharif was imprisoned in 1971 and again across the decades of Nimieri from 1969 to 95 and al-Bashir from 1989 to 2019. 10 years lost to one dictator, 6 more to another. 9 years confined to Khartoum by order of the security forces. Yet prison walls never silenced him. They only deepened his resolve. His case travelled far beyond Sudan's borders. Amnesty International and Africa Watch took it up. David Attenborough spoke of him on the BBC's Prisoner of Conscience programme. From across the world, letters poured in, 2,000 messages of solidarity in one campaign alone. And in 2008, standing in London, Sharif returned the gesture, sending words of gratitude back to those who had once written to sustain him. Though trained as a teacher in Khartoum in 1968, Sharif's classrooms were often taken away from him. He was dismissed repeatedly for refusing to bow to dictatorship, rejecting offers to be reinstated unless all his fellow teachers were restored too. His principles were unshakable. Yet teaching was not bound by chalkboards or timetables. He taught through projects of hope, mobile libraries in Khartoum's marginalised neighbourhoods, workshops where children learned to recycle scraps into possibility, programmes for adolescents who had slipped through the cracks of schooling. Always his lessons were about dignity, creativity, and the stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better. From 2004, illness pressed upon him, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, compounded by diabetes and years of harsh imprisonment. Still, he wrote, he dreamed, he spoke. On the 2nd of April 2014, in Omdurman, his voice was stilled. But when he was laid to rest in the Ahmed Sharifi cemetery, the city wept and sang. Hundreds gathered, and across the Arab world, his farewell was broadcast by Sky News Arabia, Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and BBC Arabic. Mahjoub Sharif remains a presence not bound by time, a poet who made resistance singable, a teacher who taught freedom, a man who turned pain into beauty and hope. His words still walk among the people, playful, tender, and unafraid.
Thank you so much to Dr. Vivienne Glantz for voicing over that tribute to the great Mahjoub Sharif. I grew up with his poetry from the songs that I listened to as a child in recordings on cassette tapes, because I'm dating myself back to that time. Like the Bat, which my younger cousins and my nephew now listen to and sing along to his poetry as I grew older. I think one of my most precious memories was when I was in year 10 and I had to translate a poem for English class. And by coincidence, my father was on the phone with Mahjoub Sharif, which in my household is kind of like being on the phone with like a superhero. And I was like, and I asked for permission to translate one of his most famous works, Butaka Shakhsiya, into English for an assignment. And he gave me that permission. And in translating that and reading it to my class, I was actually able to speak about the situation in Sudan and the Bashir dictatorship through his poetry. I think for a lot of people, Mahjoub Sharif's poetry and work has been a shaping force. And I know for my generation of Sudanese people, it has. And now I want other folks to be able to speak about him. So I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker of the day, Emeritus Professor Dennis Haskill. Dennis is the author of 10 collections of poetry published in Australia, the UK, and the Philippines, plus 14 volumes of literary scholarship and criticism. He was the co-editor of Westerly magazine from 1985 to 2009, and is a recipient of the Western Australian Premier's Prize for Poetry, the A.A. Phillips Prize for Distinguished Contribution to Australian Literature, and an honorary doctorate of letters from the University of Western Australia. He's general editor of for WA Poets Publishing and a member of the Order of Australia for services to literature, particularly poetry, to education and intercultural understanding. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dennis.
Thank you, Rfeif. And it's very moving for me to see that video and to learn something about Mahmoud Sharif, whom I didn't know about before. And I know most of my knowledge about Sudan comes from your father, from Rfeif. And I'm always astonished at the silence about the situation in Sudan, which seems to just go on and on in a way that makes someone like me kind of throw up my hands and think, what can be done? And it is swamped by news about Gaza, I suppose, especially, and Ukraine here in Australia and in the West generally, though it's no doubt as tragic as those situations. And to be called, I mean, I can say as a poet, to be called the people's poet seems to me the ultimate accolade. It's better than winning the Nobel Prize, I think. What more could you want as a poet than for people to love your work and to kind of speak for more than yourself? In the West, we think of poetry as a rather marginalized art form, and poets don't get the attention that pop musicians, pop singers get. And Sharif seems to have achieved that in Sudan. And there's a degree of profundity in that socially that I just can't imagine occurring in Australia. I can't think of an Australian poet, even an Aboriginal poet, who could achieve that. Of course, I look at his work and read his work and think about the English language tradition, which is the one I really know. And the poet he reminds me of is William Blake, who's the 18th century, a romantic and also in trouble with authority, a kind of radical protester. He never went to jail, but he came close a couple of times. And a lot of people thought he was quite mad. Well, he might have been a little bit mad, but in some ways he was mad in a good way. And there are two poems of Mahjoub Sharif's I'd like to read. One is called Buffoon. The poems contrast with each other, I think. And this one would work better with an audience. And if I were reading it to a live audience, I'd try and look directly at someone and then someone else and someone else, because the poem is written that way, as a direct address and a challenge. So it's called Buffoon with an exclamation mark, and it's on page 29 in the English language version of the book, which is, I'm sorry to say, the only one I can read because I don't know any Arabic at all. My partner knows some, and I think it's a language I will never, ever have a grip on. Here we go. Hey, buffoon, hold on tight, lest you fall down. Crack down on the stubborn. Snoop around. Beware. Of everything beware. Of your own shadow. Never feel shy. If the tree leaves rustle, quickly take shelter. Walking around is not without danger. Stop it. Shoot at everything, at every gust of wind, without warning, at every word travelling without a passport. Train each bird to file an intelligence report. Train all windows in cities, all lanterns in villages, all stems of sorghum. Have all ants join the informant's ranks. Have the drizzle write intelligence reports. Even better, pack all the people in bottles. Keep a close watch on the starving. Stamp the hell out of the downtrodden. Shell and bomb them down. Confiscate the stars from the night, the tide from the sea. Scratch the morning's face. Cut down the wind's wings. Block life's veins and send hope to exile. Annul the discovery of fire, the division of labour. Perhaps then you can get a safe haven, buffoon. I think it's amazing, the poem, the way it ranges. It kind of makes a mockery of the activities of repressive governments by talking about scratch the morning's face and cut down the wind's wings, as if they might extend their repressions to all of nature, and in that way makes every edict that they might bring down seem quite stupid. So it's a brave and sardonic poem. The other poem I'd like to read on page 41 in the English language version is October, Our Blood-Scarred Hero. And you didn't mention them, Rfeif, but I found the paintings which are there accompanying the poems, which are abstract, but often very powerful. They seem to have a kind of emotional significance that fits with the poems in ways I can't quite explain. But here it would be obvious to say there's red at the bottom of the painting and it's our blood-scarred hero. But again, it's sort of shifting to something as, in a way, natural and abstract as October, and describing it as our blood-scarred hero. So he jumps across categories and uses personification in a way that's really quite powerful and unusual, certainly to the English language tradition. October, our blood-scarred hero. Good morning, October, our blood-scarred hero. Welcome home. A very good evening to you. How often have you visited us, your voice slicing through melancholies, defying the ban on singing, delivering your ominous message to an oppressed nation? Rise from your dark abyss. Let the sun entrenched in a deep well emerge. Let wisdom spring from its hiding place behind the fence. Come, bind our festering wounds, mend our broken hearts. How many times in your journey to us have you faced unspeakable horrors? Yet tonight you've made it home. To the dismay of evil wishes, here you are, striding through downtown, greeted by eyes glittering with hope and resolve. In your presence, a dancing cloud bows low, flooding our homeland with the fragrance of her braided hair. The Nile breaks from its course, inviting you to a party. Its two banks stretched in anticipation like hopeful palms. In our bunkers, we've drawn strength from you, turning your songs into flame. Welcome home, October, our blood-scarred hero. Tonally, this is a very different poem to the buffoon one, but it still moves that shift between nature and the human quite adroitly. In part, it's a prayer, I think, and then it's a claim of a degree of optimism. And I like the pun on palms, which is obviously the tree, but also the palms of your hand. And like hopeful palms, of course, makes me think of prayer. So I found a lot to enjoy in the work, and I have no idea about the significance of the month of October, whether that's arbitrary or whether that's a particular date in Sudanese history that matters. Maybe you can enlighten me, Rfeif. And the other thing I wonder about when I read them, because I can only read the English language versions, is how different they are in Arabic, which is such a different sounding language.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Your readings were really beautiful, and thank you for your commentary on Unyielding verse. Just a reminder to everyone who's watching or will watch this recording that Unyielding verse is available for sale. So please contact Gadamna AlSabah to get your copy. October is actually the date of the October Revolution in 1964, where the Sudanese people protested and with that peaceful protest, forced the dictator, General Aboud, to step down. Mahjoub Sharif's poetry weaves resilience and resistance together. And it flows through the history of Sunni's resistance through all these decades. And he's always, every work he's written is built on this wealth of knowledge. And I think the point you said about hope actually really does resonate. One of his most famous verses in Arabic is "Hanabnihu binahlam behu yomadi," which is a poem that will be read later called "We Will Build It," and that has been a rallying cry for so many people. We're actually going to be very lucky to hear Mahjoub read his own poetry in a video now before our next reading. So again, thank you so much, Dennis. And,
thank you, Rfeif.
Thank you, everyone, for still staying with us. We're now going to watch that video and watch an amazing recitation in Arabic.
كلمينا ماري ذكرينا كل سمك احسن يبقى مصدرينا نحن شعب وسطى يلا يجيبوا مونا نبني 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 مسرحا ونال وسطى حرب لا 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 كبر اسبتاله صالة للثقافة تسرح الغزالة جنبها الزرافة قمر دار غيرة 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 خطط الصغار صفقت ترلي طمن القطار حرب لا 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 كبر اسبتاله صالة للثقافة تسرح الغزالة جنبها الزرافة رككم رطار غيرة 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 نطط الصغار صفقت ترلي طمن القطار حلقت وحلقت حمامة المطار نحن تبقى وفرة كل طلقة بينا نحن تبقى وفرة سمسما وبفرة سكرا وشاي كتر سايكلين جاي 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 ما في حاجة ساي كله عنده دين كله عنده راي السودان بارة والجنينة عبري ولا واو حاجة مش كويسة كل ذول براو هي سوداننا بكرة من سوداننا ناو هي سوداننا بكرة من سوداننا ناو هي سوداننا بكرة من سوداننا ناو بينا نحن تبقى وفرة سمسما وبفرة سكرا وشاي تتر سايكلين جاي 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 ما في حاجة ساي كله عنده دين كله عنده راي بور سودان بارة والجنينة عبري ولا واو حاجة مش كويسة كل ذول براو هي سوداننا بكرة من سوداننا ناو هي سوداننا بكرة من سوداننا ناو انت تقرا تعرف السياسة، تكتب انت تقرا تعرف السياسة، في محل حراسة حجرة الدراسة، في محل حراسة حجرة الدراسة، تمشي انت تلقى في الظلم ملمبة، ألف ضحكة حلوة تسندك بجنبه، بيت من طبنجة أحسن الكمنجة، أحلى شكل منجة أحسن الحديد. تكتب انت تقرا تعرف السياسة، في محل حراسة حجرة الدراسة، تمشي انت تلقى في الظلم ملمبة، ألف ضحكة حلوة تسندك بجنبه، بيت من طبنجة أحسن الكمنجة، أحلى شكل منجة أحسن الحليب. السلمية الديمقراطية، نعم لكل حل سلمي ديمقراطي وطني.
That is one of that amazing performance was the norm of Mahjoub Sharif's poetry. The people's poet spoke with the voice of the Sudanese people and for hope for the future. Something I find extremely beautiful is the same intonation and inflection he uses for his poetry in the 90s and 80s was the same one that protesters used for their chants in 2019. Mahjoub Sharif's voice has echoed through the generations. Our next speaker is Dr. Vivienne Glance. Vivienne is a playwright, performer, prose and poetry writer. Her work has been published and presented in Australia and internationally. She holds a PhD in creative writing from the University of Western Australia, and her creative interests lie at the intersection of science, art, society, environmental activism, and cultural diversity. Take it away, Viv.
Hello, and thank you so much for the introduction, Rfeif, and welcome everybody. I really have so much enjoyed watching these videos from Sudan, and as it has been, I know that Rfeif, I did an event with Rfeif a couple of weeks ago, and her staunch speaking out for Sudan continues as it did today. So thanks for that, Rfeif. It's important that people hear this. I'm so honoured to be asked to do a review of Unyielding verse, so I'll get straight onto that. It was, as Dennis said, it was a wonderful opportunity to be introduced to a poet's work in English that I had not come across before, so I'm really happy to do that. And the life and achievements of Mahjoub Sharif will be known to many of you here and many of you listening, I'm sure, and they're also detailed in the foreword to this small collection of poems translated by Adil Babikir, and I see that Adil Babikir is with us today, so welcome. And there's also a foreword by Lemia Shamat. Now, Unyielding Poems is curated by the poet's family 10 years after his death, And it brings together some of Sharif's most well-known and influential works. Many of these poems were written whilst he was incarcerated as a prisoner of conscience. And the foreword recounts how his words lifted the spirits of his fellow prisoners. These are poems of resilience, of love, and of defiance. Sharif has a lightness of touch with language and can paint images with very few words, but he places his imagery on huge canvases, and the themes emerge across many poems that show his determination to defeat oppression and to fight for freedom. But they also go beyond that. His love for his country and to place is clearly shown through his many references to nature, to land, to rivers, plants, and birds. And this is aptly shown in perhaps his most famous work, Homesick Sparrow. This small, unassuming, cheerful, and energetic bird often lives amongst people in cities, and in this poem it perches on the heart's window with longing eyes. It has become a person held in a prison cell, where it is elevated to the role of dreamer, of lover, father, and teacher, and most importantly, as someone who will, in quotes, will never succumb. Now, similar references are found in all of these poems, and it shows a deep connection to place and to the healing powers of nature. The clouds and the breeze bring comfort. Water and rivers sustain, and from the sun's glare, a mawal is spun. Nature is present again in Buffoon, the poem that Dennis shared with us earlier. This poem is full of defiance and ridicule, and Sharif dares the despot to harness nature in his service, to train each bird to file an intelligence report, or have all the ants join the informant's ranks, and to even confiscate the stars from the night, the tide from the sea. Now, this is, of course, impossible, and it reflects the poet's determination that no oppressor will ever find the safe haven they will inevitably seek. And this refusal to allow oppression to defeat him is shown in the poem ID. Now, here he humanizes the details required for identification, which is just a way to categorize people and to take away their essential humanity, a means of placing them in boxes for authorities to manage more easily. Sharif resists this and derails their attempt at order by replacing it with the unique messiness of being human. Full name, a human. Parents, the kind people. They are my dearly loved, my artery. And again, Ideal is followed by My Folks, a poem which demonstrates the long history of his country's struggle for freedom and democracy. It is a homage to the people of Sudan who, like a true loving parent, have endowed our heart with your historic boldness. And it goes on to celebrate how this nation's people have instilled in him his resistance against tyranny, and anticipates the continuation of the struggle through the final couplet, because a bullet can never be a seed of life. Verily, a bullet can never be a seed of life. The repetition shifts the meaning from explanation, that is, that bullets destroy instead of nurturing and creating, and turns this phrase into a defiant chant. Now, after My Folks comes two related poems, October, Our Blood-Scarred Hero, that Dennis also read, which refers to the October Revolution of '64, and The Plight is Over. Now, these poems form a short trilogy that serves as a reminder that the struggle to achieve justice and democracy oscillates between progress and retreat, but it always continues. And written over 20 years after the revolution, October, Our Blood-Scarred Hero talks to an oppressed nation, and it could be seen as referring back to My Folks and to the civilians of Sudan who persist in their quest for freedom. In our bunkers, we've drawn strength from you, turning your songs into flame. And the third poem in this sort of trilogy, I suppose, is The Plight is Over, and was written in 1985, following the people's uprising against the dictator Nimeri. This poem is full of hope. It expresses a desire for a future free from tyranny in a nation with wisdom glowing, never bowed down to oppression. It's a celebration of this moment of victory before the military and the Islamic Brotherhood once again crushed Sudanese democracy in 1989. The civil disobedience, strikes and protests of 1964 were met with violence and oppression, and it could be argued that apart from that short time in 1985, the Sudanese people have been struggling for peace ever since. Now, the next poem I want to talk about is Crazy in Love with You, a poem without defiance, written in 1979 to his wife, Amira Ergezuli. Now, Sharif was arrested and imprisoned during their wedding celebrations, and he writes about how she's always with him, and thinking of her brings him comfort. It took a long time before she was allowed to visit him, and this poem appears to recount that moment, and I'll just read this poem now. I'm crazy in love with you. You've taken up the depth of my soul for a home, and my pulse as your standing guard. In your warmth, I live the loveliest episode of my life. In your abode, I find my best resort, and along the shores of your eyes, my favorite stroll. In your company, my life starts to become meaningful, and no door is closed anymore. I see the world as a fascinating mound, the morning breeze spreading its pillows around. Thanks to you, the river and I become intimate friends, and my eyes fall in love with the cheeks of the flower. I'm again on excellent terms with me, and my chronic wounds heal. Back on my feet, I call out your name. To its rhythm I dance and sing, and I defiantly proclaim, your warmth has brought me back to life. You've made up for my times of sorrow, times of torment and strife, and when our eyes met, I came to embrace the soft rain of joy I've long missed. I wish we'd crossed paths earlier. I wished we'd met a little earlier. Now, this poem shows how keeping close to love is a way to survive the torment of separation. This collection of 12 poems, which is a wonderful collection, I recommend it to everybody. Please do grab a copy. It's really worth buying. It ends with the poem We'll Build It. And I think Rfeif mentioned that earlier. We'll Build It is an anthem of hope. It praises the collectivism needed to build a homeland where everything is equally shared, where each person is housed, educated and cared for, where everyone has access to the means of life. And it's an enduring dream that sustains Sudan in these difficult times. It's a simple dream, but one which I hope we will all live to see. So let me read this one. We'll build it. We assure you our daily dream will come true. A homeland proud and potent, a homeland for democracy and virtue. A homeland is in full control of its destiny. Glowing like a flame, a homeland highly treasured, its precious stars glittering high up. Strong will, sovereignty, liberty. Autocracy gives way to collective leadership. In a place of jail rises a hospital, and a college in the place of exile, in the place of detention, a workshop, in the place of grief, a song, in the place of a bullet, a bird, hovering around a fountain, joking with the kids of the kindergarten. We will build it. We assure you, our daily dream will come true. A homeland spreading to peace its wings, and against war its guns, its hands extended to the suppressed in occupied land, to the handcuffed. We will build it, we assure you. Our daily dream will come true. A homeland vast and enormous can't be built by a single hand, by clamorous radio broadcasts and zealous speeches. A homeland where everything is equally shared. Under its shade, we dream get educated, get cured, get a home, power and water. Below us darkness tumbles down, and on our foreheads a glittering dawn. The long subdued sun elegantly comes out, glittering with the people's signature stamped on, and the whole world stands amazed at our bold will, at the unity of ranks and files. So I first became aware of Sharif's work when Rfeif, Ismail and I co-transcreated into English an excerpt from his poem, Maryam and Mai. Now, this epic work was written during his time in Port Sudan prison in 1990, the same year that he wrote Homesick Sparrow. Deeply understand the impact of Mahjoub Sharif's works on the soul of Sudan, but I know it must have been huge to earn him the title of the people's poet. The troubles of his people are documented in history, but to have this expressed through poetry allows one as the reader to move beyond your mind and into your heart, your soul. And I'm certain this small volume of 12 poems in both English and Arabic will help Sharif's legacy to endure and grow, and will bring his hope and resilience for a free Sudan to new audiences across the world. Now, to close, it is a cliche to say the pen is mightier than the sword, but in unyielding verse and in the legacy of Mahjoub Sharif, that well-worn phrase lives on in so many ways. Within his poems, Sharif often refers to seeing beyond the dirty fences as a way to not allow his imprisonment to contain him. He celebrates the countless voices breaking through the walls and carrying their message to rivers and clouds, to the deep love people have for their country that banishes darkness, and to the smiles that dance in the hearts and families at home. His poems are his weapon, slicing through prison bars, singing out for freedom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vivienne. And thank you for the beautiful recitation. Just a reminder that you can order your copy of Unyielding Verse by texting the number on your screen now. And please do. This book, this collection is something that is desperately needed in these trying times. As we close, I actually wanted to talk about one of my favorite poems, بطاقة شخصية, ID. بطاقة شخصية starts with الشعب طيب, الشعب حبيب وشرياني. They are my dearly beloved, my arteries. In this, Mahjoub Sharif speaks about the Sudanese people. When he says الاسم الكامل الإنسان الشعب الطيب والضيق, he's saying my full name, a human, my parents, the kind people, the Sudanese people. بطاقة شخصية encapsulates his hope for the future, but also his knowledge that resistance, as it rises and falls and rises and falls, can never be extinguished. It's a candle. For me, growing up in the diaspora, this poem was a comfort. It was almost an anthem. بطاقة شخصية was the first poem I memorized as a child. It was the first poem I read in Arabic. Before I even read my father's works, I read بطاقة شخصية. Before I could read, I memorized Mahjoub Sharif's poetry, and particularly this poem. I can honestly say that I would not be who I am as a writer, as an artist, without the influence of Mahjoub Sharif. His complexity, he showed me that you can create work that is always leading towards justice, that is always leading towards hope. And he has shown that to many, not just the Sudanese people, but any Arabic-speaking person. And now with this collection, with the generous work of his family, the incredible translations by Dr. Adil Babikir, the beautiful artwork that Dr. Hassan Musa has done, the gorgeous illustration by Al-Ustaz Yasser Ali, and the beautiful foreword by Lamia Shmat. We can see this in English, and you can get a glimpse into not just the people's poets of Sudan, but the soul of Sudan, unyielding and enduring. So thank you so much for joining us for this celebration of Unyielding Verse. Please order your copies and remember that whenever you see this, just send through a text and get this beautiful book. If you are teaching a course in English and you're trying to find some beautiful multicultural work, this is what should be on your syllabus right now. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope we can see you again for the celebration of Mahjoub Sharif's work. And this official English book launch in Australia has concluded. Thank you. And I want to give a special thank you to Maryam and May Mahjoub Sharif, who have also joined us today. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing a part of your father with all of us in this collection. His legacy lives on in you and in the hope of the Sudanese people.
Actually, I did not prepare to speak. I was during all this beautiful, wonderful session, listening, learning from all of you, and I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much. I feel like my words is really poor with the rich thoughts you provided today, Rfeif, and Vivienne, and all of the speakers today. So I don't know if I said thank you will be a right word for how I feel and how I deeply appreciate this event today. Thank you. Thank you all.
الشعب حبيبي وشرياني، أداني بطاقة شخصية، من غيره الدنيا وقباله قدامي جزاير وهمية. الشعب حبيبي وشرياني، أداني بطاقة شخصية، من غيره الدنيا وقباله قدامي جزاير وهمية. الاسم الكامل الإنسان، الشعب الطيب والدية، المهنة بناضل وبتعلم، تلميذ في مدرسة الشعبي، المدرسة فاتحة على الشارع، والشارع فاتح في القلب، والشارع فاتح في القلب، والقلب مساكن شعبية، والشارع فاتح في القلب، والقلب مساكن شعبية. وديني محل ما توديني، وديني وانسى أصحابي وجيراني، خليني في سجنك وانساني من أجل الناس الطيبين، وعشان أطفالنا الجايين، من أجل الناس الطيبين، وعشان أطفالنا الجايين، وحياة الشعب السوداني. في وش المدفع تلقاني، في وش المدفع تلقاني، وأنا واقف بهتف مع شعبي. سلمية 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 ضد الحرامية، سلمية 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 ضد الحرامية، وحياة الشعب السوداني. في وش المدفع تلقاني، في وش المدفع تلقاني، وأنا واقف بهتف مع شعبي. الثورة طريقي وأيامي معدودة وتحيا الحرية، 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 الثورة طريقي وأيامي معدودة وتحيا.
ليلهم الخوف والكوابيس والخيانة، ليلهم الخوف والكوابيس والخيانة. نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح، نحنا قدامنا الصباح.